welcome everyone, and thank you for attending our webinar. We are excited to have you for the IMA Student Series, Pathways to Success, Inspiring Accounting and Finance Career Journeys. So this is the 8th time we've held a panel webinar geared towards students, but this panel will differ from our previous student series because we are going to speak with professionals who are more seasoned in their career. We hope you will gain more insight into the robust and rewarding career that you can have as a management accountant and, of course, a member of IMA. We are glad to have you all with us today, and we are looking forward to the discussion. There is a quick note that this session is being recorded, and we will be sending out this recording after the webinar to all those who have registered. You are muted upon entry, and we encourage you that while you're attending this webinar, to ask questions using the Q&A function. For some questions, we will be able to answer them directly. I'm going to be monitoring the Q&A. And for others, we will cover the questions after our panel discussion. So my name is Mary Patterson, and I will be your host for tonight's webinar. My role with IMA is the Academic Business Development Manager. And along with me is Mitra Kleinberg, who is the Corporate Business Development Manager. We both cover the North America region, and Mitra will be interviewing our panelists in a little bit. So let's take a look at today's agenda. I will be giving a quick overview of IMA, both the CMA and FMAA certifications, and then we will get right into the panel discussion at the end. We will have some time to take questions from the audience, and I will be monitoring the Q&A. So please put your questions in the Q&A box, and we will try to answer as many as we can along the way. So let's start with some information about IMA. IMA is a global association with more than 140,000 members who are accounting and finance professionals working in business. Our organization has more than 300 professional and student chapters located in cities and campuses around the world. And by joining IMA, students and professionals have the opportunity to not only network with accounting and financial professionals in your local area, but it also opens the door to a network with professionals all over the world. IMA offers resources for accounting and finance educators, and as well as 3 globally recognized certifications. Oops. Our 3 certifications are meant to prepare you for every stage of your career journey. Our newest one is the FMAA, Financial and Managerial Accounting Associate. This certification instills the fundamental knowledge and competencies in accounting and finance, allowing students and professionals to showcase their expertise to employers and build a foundation to expand their skills. So this is good for 2-year college students, 4-year college students early in their academic career, wanting to give yourself an edge, and also for business professionals working in HR, marketing, and operations, such as business owners. We also have the CMA certification, which we are known for, and it has been around for over 50 years, and that is meant for 4-year college students in accounting and finance majors, early and mid-level accounting and finance professionals, and of course, CPAs that are moving from audit to industry career opportunities. And then finally, we have the CSCA, which is certified in strategy and competitive analysis, which is meant more for those who are in a senior position in their career and aspire to or already have a seat at the leadership table. A little bit more about the FMAA certification, since it is so new. It was developed to address market needs, and 5 key content domains were identified, which you can see on this slide, such as general accounting and financial management, financial statement preparation and analysis, planning and budgeting, class management, performance metrics, and professional ethics. You can also see that with the FMAA, this exam is made up of 80 multiple choice questions. And although you do need to study with some prep materials and put in the time, it is not as heavy as a lift as some of our other certifications, and the requirements are more flexible. So it is a good stepping stone, especially for accounting and finance students. Now, the CMA is the certification that all 3 of our panelists have, so they will briefly touch on it for a quick overview, but the exam is composed of 2 parts: testing your fluency in both accounting and finance, The exams are each 4 hours in length, starting with 100 multiple choice questions and concluding with 2 essay scenarios. Part 1 covers things like different financial statements, the budgeting process, best practices in internal control and data analytics. And you will see that a lot of this information overlaps from your cost and managerial classes or your intermediate financial accounting classes. And then part 2 covers things like financial ratios, risk and return models, variable and fixed cost, capital budgeting techniques, and ethics. So hopefully these topics sound familiar to you because the content covered on the CMA exam is very relevant to the different roles you may have working inside of a business. So let's move on and meet our panel, and I will let Mitra take it from here.
All right, great, Mary. Thank you so much. So let me give some background on our wonderful 3 panelists, and then we'll dive right into questions. First, we're going to cover Eric, the first picture. Eric Lenard is Vice President, Global Services of Finance at Johnson & Johnson, the world's largest healthcare company. He's responsible for global accounting, payroll, and compliance operations and execution, along with enterprise and employee financial services for Johnson & Johnson's businesses across all sectors and regions. Eric has been with J&J since 2004, holding several financial leadership roles in the company's vision care, general surgery, and orthopedics franchises, along with 3 years at the head of corporate treasury and 3.5 years as a CFO for one of J&J's newest franchises, focused on developing robotic and digital solutions for surgical intervention. Prior to joining J&J, Eric worked at Procter & Gamble. Eric is a graduate of Ohio State University, where he simultaneously earned his BSBA and MBA in finance, and he is a certified management accountant and certified finance manager, and currently serves on IMA's Global Board of Directors. Eboni Wilkerson is a finance and accounting professional with over 20 years experience in multi-billion-dollar global Fortune 500 companies across multiple industries. She has spent the majority of her career in supply chain finance and accounting, working in the manufacturing industry, including food, packaging, and consumer products. Eboni is currently a finance director at Microsoft, leading the mergers and acquisition function in finance operations, focused on ensuring a successful transition of the accounting close function from the acquired company to Microsoft systems and processes. She also holds a bachelor's degree from Washington State University and is a certified management accountant. Himanshu Rai is a certified management accountant as well. You can see the common theme between the 3 of them, with over 20 years of experience in the manufacturing sector. His professional endeavors include assignments in the controllers organizations, FP&A teams, and international operations of large and mid-sized organizations such as GM, Ford, Tenneco, and McCormick Corporation. In his current role, he leads the global manufacturing finance team for Starbucks. Himanshu served on the IMA Global Board of Directors from 2018 to 2020. So welcome to the 3 of you. Thank you so much for joining us. And I know the audience is very excited to hear from your experiences and learn from you. You all have long-standing careers and have moved up over the years to leadership roles. So let's just dive right in with the first question. And let's go ahead in order of the picture. So Eric, would you briefly describe your career path so far?
Sure, thanks, Mitra, and it's great to see everybody on the Zoom. Looking forward to having a great discussion with all of you. But as you said, I started my career at Procter & Gamble. Earlier on, I interned there for a couple of summers and then started there full time. Worked in traditional kind of corporate finance roles. So, worked in the manufacturing sites as a senior analyst, worked at headquarters and various sales and marketing roles, did an FP&A job, and made the decision about 6.5 years in to leave, partly because of my interest in getting a CMA, and more importantly, my interest in really exploring more than just business unit finance. I want to be a much more robust, well-rounded finance and accounting manager. So left P&G 20 years ago, joined Johnson & Johnson, where I've had a number of roles traveling around the country, starting in our vision care franchise, kind of standing up a pharmaceutical business within our vision care business or our AccuView business. Was a director for our Ethicon business. And again, for those of you who don't know the names of our businesses, J&J invented the surgical suture. But at the time when I was there, we had about a 90% market share. So big business, especially from a manufacturing standpoint. So I had all the manufacturing plants in North and South America reporting into me from a finance and accounting standpoint. Then moved up to the Boston area to work on our orthopedics franchise, which was again, we have different business names for our businesses. It'd be simpler if we just called orthopedics and surgery as opposed to Ethicon and Visticon. But our orthopedics business was called DePuy Synthes. And I ran, was the head of finance for our spinal surgery division for a couple of years. And then we reorganized and I ran the strategic financial analysis for the entire orthopedics franchise. At the time it was about $10 billion. Then worked in corporate treasury. My entire career up to that point had been entirely around supporting individual businesses and kind of serving as the head of finance or a finance analyst for a different part of the business. I wanted to have much more of an enterprise perspective. So I went back to our headquarters in New Brunswick, New Jersey, and joined corporate treasury, where I essentially kind of served as J&J's representative for all of the Wall Street banks that we work with. Also owned our entire capital market strategies. So all of our cash and debt forecasting, a lot of our economic analysis, but also all of the short and long-term debt that P&G issued. Or J&J issued. I was the person in charge of that. Did that for about 3 years. Then relocated out to Northern California, the Silicon Valley area in San Francisco Bay, to take on J&J's first entry into surgical robotics and really trying to change the trajectory of surgery by using physician-controlled robots to perform delicate procedures as opposed to the surgeon doing it, his or herself. So served as the first CFO for a number of businesses we had acquired to create the franchise that now exists for surgical robotics. Was out there for about 3 years and then moved back to New Jersey, where I have my current role as the head of global shared services finance for across the enterprise. So I run the accounting operations for Johnson & Johnson globally, about 2,500 people in my organization, managing all of our accounting, closing the books, doing payroll, master data management, all of those pieces, and getting into data and analytics and digital and artificial intelligence. So I've been in that job for about 18 months. That's my very quick career story.
Wow, that's pretty amazing. You really touched all sides of the business, it looks like, in your 20 years with J&J. So that's really great. Thank you, Eric. Ebony, how about you? Can you tell us a little bit about your career path so far?
Yeah, absolutely. And impressive listening to Eric there and his career journey. And I love the accounting and finance background there. Thanks for sharing, Eric. And thanks for having me, Mitra and Mary. It's good to be back with you guys. So my career started in a manufacturing facility. And I think I want to take a step back, actually, because when I was majoring in college, I didn't know what I wanted to major in. I literally took a personality type test, like Myers-Briggs personality type indicator test that would help kind of narrow down some of my areas of focus and things that I was interested in. So it did suggest a career in finance, in accounting. And I took my first accounting course, Accounting 101. And fell in love with debits and credits. And so that's sort of what led me on the path to a degree in accounting. It wasn't something that I grew up wanting to be an accountant. And so with that, I took it and I committed to it. And there were certain courses that I took while at university that sort of let me know what I was interested in, wasn't interested in. And so upon graduation, I actually started my career in a manufacturing facility as a staff accountant. And I really enjoyed that. And that's where I began to learn about the full cycle accounting, accounts payable, accounts receivable, payroll, inventory management, closing the books, journal entries, account reconciliations, fixed assets, like everything that accounting touches, and really learned and got rolled up my sleeves and got really involved in that and enjoyed that. I stayed in the manufacturing facility. That's sort of like what kicked off my career in supply chain manufacturing and finance. And as I progressed throughout my career, I did end up at Starbucks. I was in their cost accounting team doing the manufacturing variance analysis for the coffee roasting plants. So spent some time understanding what a bill of material was and understanding cost management, cost accounting, standard costing processes, variance analysis, purchase price variance, all of the whole nine, and just kind of took my journey that way. And then probably about 10 years into my career, so I was at 2 companies for the span of 10 years, learning all things related to cost accounting, general accounting management. I had moved to Chicago, Illinois, and in the Midwest, there's a heavy food industry base in the Midwest. And so I worked for a number of companies in varying roles, from senior financial analyst, more on the sales forecasting side, to a cost accounting manager, and leading a team in cost accounting and inventory management. I worked for companies such as Conagra Brands or Conagra Foods, Mondelez International. I worked for smaller family-owned companies, a pizza manufacturing company, worked my way up to a plant controller at a meat manufacturing company that was based in Iowa but had facilities in the Chicagoland area, owning full P&L management, from top sales down to earnings before interest and tax, EBITDA, and then net income. Full balance sheet account reconciliation, ownership of all balance sheet accounts for the plant, and also had some experience in finance, supply chain finance management as well. I've managed capital projects where you're tracking the end-to-end flow of dollars as it relates to installing a full $35 million manufacturing line, tracking savings, tracking variances to budget, variance actual versus forecast, understanding what the drivers were in each of those scenarios. And then I was recruited out of Chicago to consider a career in tech over at Microsoft back in 2019. And at the time, I was like, I'm not interested in tech. I don't understand how my supply chain background aligns. There's not a huge supply chain focus. We do have hardware here. We have cloud services and whatnot. We have data centers and things. And, once I understood that I did have a valuable background that would apply to a tech company, I considered the opportunity. So I started out at Microsoft in supply chain accounting for the reverse logistics team. So if we think about a device that needs to be returned for repair or refurbishment, my team managed the accounting and the inventory for that. And I did that for 2.5 years before moving into the role that I'm in today, which is leading mergers and acquisitions, accounting operations side. So when we do purchase a company, and the big name right now, Activision Blizzard King, a deal that Microsoft closed on last October, it's understanding that company's accounting operations processes, lining them up against Microsoft, seeing if there's any gaps or differences, and how can we mitigate that, or even find synergies in the things that company does versus what our company does. So it's a really fascinating job, and I've been able to apply a lot of what I've learned over the years to this role. So.
Wow, that's really great. It's interesting to see the different paths that you took, or even, companies approaching you and maybe saying, how is this going to relate? But ends up that it really led you to the right place. That's great. How about you, Himanshu? Can we hear about your career path?
Yeah, absolutely. First of all, thank you for inviting me today. My journey has been a bit convoluted, and I would argue even unorthodox. So unlike Ebony and Eric, I'm not an accountant. I actually happen to be an engineer by my educational background. So, Ebony mentioned doing that personality test in college. I wish I would have done that, because I would have figured that out much earlier, that I'm a finance professional at heart, more than an engineer. But anyways, I started out my career as an engineer in the automotive industry. I still consider myself a child of the automotive industry, a bit of a gearhead. So first few years as an engineer with Ford and Chrysler, which now it's called Stellantis. And then early 2000s, I went back to school part-time to get an MBA from University of Michigan, Go Blue. And I did most of my academic work in finance. I liked what I saw. I liked that fact that I could use my engineering background and apply the same principles, the same kind of mindset. I found similarities in the land of finance. So after graduating in 2003, I joined Ford again as a finance professional in their rotation program. I was there for a few years. From there, I moved on to a company called Freudenberg NOK. So this was a Japanese-German company with an American operation right in Michigan. And I was there for 7 years. So the first 3 years, 3.5 years, I was with their corporate group. So this is like my formative years as a finance professional. That's where I learned about, what do you really do at a month-end close? What are some of the standard work you do? How do you look at forecasts? How do you do, annual budgets? And most importantly, how do you help your, operating partners drive through critical decisions? So I was in that role in 2008 when the whole, the Great Recession happened. We did a lot of restructuring around that time, and I was very heavily involved in that effort. So it was nice to see the work I did resulted in some of the critical decisions they made around that time. So from there, I moved on to an expat position as a CFO of their Mexico operations. I lived in a city called Querétaro, Mexico, about 2.5 hours from Mexico City. So I was there for 3 years, and I had manufacturing operations in Mexico, and then I also had a corporate staff that I supervised. So basically, it was a special assignment to streamline the operations there, divest some operations, we bought a new company. So they gave me a list of things I needed to do. And basically I was there for 3 years doing those things. A great learning opportunity in a different culture, and very hands-on, and just being able to do that. I still consider that as a highlight of my career. So from Freudenberg, I moved on out of the automotive for a little bit. I went to McCormick, which is, as you guys know, is the big spice company out of Baltimore. And I was the director of finance for their manufacturing operations, very similar to what both Eric and Ebony did earlier in their careers, supervising a group of controllers and the tactical work they did, and also did some of the business partnering and also process improvement stuff. Wasn't there for long, about a year, and then I came back to Detroit to my automotive roots, and then did a couple of similar roles with big companies such as Johnson Controls, which are a big company in the seating and interiors. Then from there, I moved on to General Motors, back to my OEM roots, and I was a segment CFO for all their engines and also their mid-sized trucks. So I was there for 4 years, and then 2 relatively short roles, very similar to what I had at McCormick, director of finance for manufacturing operations, with a bunch of plants reporting up to me from a finance perspective. So a couple of years ago, Starbucks approached me, and they asked me a question: how would you like to build up our manufacturing finance team, which was decimated because of what happened during the times of COVID. So I told them I'm listening, keep talking. And then next thing I know, I've been there for 2 years now, and that's what I do. But all in all, I would say most of my career has been in manufacturing operations, working with plants, and also, working with companies, like my Freudenberg experience. It was a big influence from the Toyota side. So I learned a lot about lean manufacturing. So as accountants, we look at the effectiveness dimension a lot. How did we do against the budgets and forecasts? But in that environment, the focus is more on efficiency. How are you doing with time? How are you getting better? Are you getting worse? How are you doing against benchmarks? So I learned that approach, and I'm gradually spreading that word. I'm hoping, as I end my career in the years to come, more people embrace that approach and, the efficiency and effectiveness, they're two equal partners in how people run their businesses. So in a nutshell, that's my career.
That's great. Thank you, Himanshu. It's interesting because you called yourself a gearhead early on. And what I liked about that comment is you followed your passions, and that's the nice thing about corporate accounting or finance. If there's a company that you truly believe in or products, that you want to learn more about, you can do accounting and finance for them and learn that way as well. So very good. Let me stick with you, Himanshu. And just, we're going to make it brief because we got a lot of questions to go through. But, why did you choose corporate accounting and finance career versus, once you realize, hey, I like accounting, I like finance, why didn't you, go to a public accounting firm instead and go that route?
Well, for me, the reason was simple. I simply couldn't do public accounting. Being from an unorthodox background, being an engineer, that avenue was not open for me. So moreover, what I was interested was in managerial side of things, running the business, helping my business partners. And for that, CMA made a lot more sense than a CPA or some other public accounting avenue.
Yeah, there's much more flexibility if you have different backgrounds, which is great. Ebony, what would you like to add to that question?
Yeah, I think I knew early on that public wasn't for me. I had taken some courses that I didn't do so hot in, taxation, auditing, things like that. And so while I don't think I set out to pursue a corporate role or even industry for that matter, because at the time I didn't even know the difference. I just knew I wasn't interested in public. And so I wanted to find a role that allowed me to utilize what I had learned that I loved, which was around the cost accounting piece. And so that's kind of what I stuck with. And that's served me well. I think I tried to sit for the CPA exam twice and that didn't go over so well. But at the time I didn't know about the CMA. So I pursued what I was passionate about and what excited me. Because I just knew that was what, I believe in getting up and going to work and enjoying what you do. And so that's what I was seeking to find.
That's great. How about you, Eric? And what would your recommendation be for those who want to go into industry versus public accounting?
Yeah, I definitely would say just try it out. I mean, I was coming from a little bit of a different, slant when I was in college. I wanted to be in investment finance. And I interned with an investment firm, with a stock brokerage firm. But the one thing that I learned, the more that I started researching companies, I wanted to be part of what the company did and not just be the person on the outside observing the companies and doing analysis for them. I wanted to be part of what makes it happen. I also had friends and colleagues who were interning at corporations and corporate finance, companies. And the one thing that I had heard was that the corporate finance person is the one person in any corporation that has their hands in everything, because we're that, important to the corporation running. And I had a lot of different interests. So I liked the idea of being in corporate finance, and I could be the person who also understands the sales and marketing and the R&D and the supply chain and all the different pieces of the company. So that's really what kind of attracted me to go into the corporate finance fields. And I really just pursued, an internship with P&G, realized I really loved it and stuck to it. So if you have that interest in really being part of, how a corporation works and operates and drives to success, then look for opportunities within corporations to do just that.
That's a great point. I hear that a lot from folks who go into, industry positions. They say, I really wanted to be a value creator, where public accounting sometimes focuses more on compliance. They actually want to help these companies make money and grow. And so it's a different way of looking at things. So very
think
good.
if I could add to that, Mitra, company culture is really important, right? And so to piggyback off of what Eric said, if you find a company that you aspire to work for because you've heard great things about the culture, the people, or the leadership, I think it's important to consider that as well, because that will also lend to your great career experience, is knowing that you're working for a company that you believe the same things that they believe, your values are the same, your mission is aligned, and that too is very important. I just wanted to add that.
Great point. Super important. I agree.
Yeah.
Oh, I was going to say, all three of you are CMAs. And I want to talk a little bit about how the CMA aligns with your job responsibilities over the years as you've moved up in your careers. And how did you even hear about the CMA to begin with? So maybe Eric, you want to start with that?
Sure. Yeah. So I knew I didn't want to be a CPA. I knew I made the decision about pursuing a corporate finance career. Didn't think that the CPA was going to do really anything for me. And I was at the time I was living in Cincinnati, it was my hometown. I was working at P&G. I was the president of the National Black MBA Association chapter there. And a lot of the colleagues that I had that were in the finance field, especially the ones that worked at J&J, our offices in Cincinnati, were CMAs. And I asked about what is that? And they basically said, it's like the CPA, but it's relevant for people that are actually in industry, that are working in corporate finance. So that really, really intrigued me. And again, like I said in my intro, one of the reasons that I decided to join J&J was because J&J really, really supported the IMA overall and getting a CMA as a very important way to build your finance and accounting acumen in ways that are much more specific to the career path that I was going on.
Yeah, I work with J&J employees quite a bit, and they provide a lot of support towards certification and covering costs and things like that, and really encourage that. They want to see their employees, continue their education and kind of be lifelong learners. So it's a great culture. Ebony, how about you?
Yeah, so as I mentioned, just for the courses that I took in college that I really gravitated toward, or even just came natural to me, cost accounting, management, managerial accounting, intermediate accounting, those things, that's where the CMA kind of stood out to me. Now, I didn't hear about the CMA while I was in college 20 plus years ago. I didn't know anything about it. The reason I pursued it is because I was at a company and I was talking with my manager about promotion. And at that particular company, higher degrees and certifications were highly valued for promotion. And so she said, if you want to become director, you're going to need to either go back to school for a master's degree or you need to consider a certification. And I had already decided that the CPA was not for me. And so I actually went out on a Google search and was just like, what else is out there that I have experience in that I can get certified in? And that's where the certified management accountant came up. And so I began to think about and consider whether or not I wanted to pursue that. And, having been in my career for quite some time, by the time I stumbled upon it, it was a huge decision because by that time I had gotten married, I had built a family. And so it was really a decision that was going to require some time. So that's how I heard about it. As you mentioned early, Mary, when you discussed the CMA exam, part one is where I just really, really gravitated toward because a lot of those concepts were what I had experience in when you're thinking about cost accounting, cost management, performance management, budgeting and forecasting, variance analysis, internal controls, job costing, make versus buy, all of those things really gravitated and I had experience in. I mean, I literally was making decisions on a day-to-day basis based on the content that I was studying for. So it really flowed naturally for me for what I had already experienced. And then it just kind of gave me the leg up to get the certification. And I think it's really helped because of what I did study and become certified in. I do think that those concepts apply to my day-to-day job.
That's great. Thank you. And I'm glad you did your own research and figured it out for the CMA. How about you, Himanshu?
Yeah, for me, it goes back to a conversation I had with the corporate controller at Freudenberg back in 2007. So when I joined the company a few months later, I went to his office. I said, I want to be a part of your organization. I want to have a long-term career, in finance and accounting. And he said, well, you're a half an accountant. You have an MBA, you're taking classes in accounting, but you haven't never worked in accounting before. So I said, what can I do? How can I improve myself? How can I get that credibility, that knowledge that I need to have a career, long-term career in this field? So he was a CPA and a CMA, both, and he suggested that I pursue the CMA route. And that's what I did. So in 2008, I started, the CMA whatever I needed to do. And by 2010, I had the certification.
That's great. It's nice to hear that all of you had mentors in your careers that encouraged the certification, knew that it would help you move up in your career. So that's really great to hear. And also, Himanshu, since you don't have that traditional accounting and finance background, I do want to point out that the CMA, the education requirement is just a bachelor's from a university or credit college. So it doesn't have to be in a specific major. So that does allow some flexibility. Great. So let's stick with you, Himanshu. Can you tell us about the role you've been most excited about in your long career?
Yeah, as I mentioned earlier, my years in Mexico, that was a role that I really enjoyed. And quite frankly, I don't think I was ready for that role at that time. Basically, they had a guy in that role and he left the company and they found me, and I had some connection with the work I had done in Mexico. But clearly it was a stepping up position for me. So the operation itself wasn't doing well for many years. We had a lot of operational challenges. We wanted to take our best practices in the US and Germany and bring them to our Mexico operation. So there was a long laundry list of things that needed to be done, and I had to build a team there as well. So very pleased with the results we were able to achieve in those three years, and also very satisfied with my own learnings going through that experience.
Himanshu, a question came in when you were talking about your career. For someone that might be working in a different country for an American company, was it necessary for you to learn the local language, or how did you navigate that when you were living there?
Great questions. I did pick up a bit of Spanish when I was there. So that was a little bit of extra thing that I picked up. But yeah, I mean, if you go on these international assignments, you will find out that in most countries, professionals know English. So you can get by with your English skills, but it helps to have the local knowledge and, pick up a little bit of vocabulary, if not being totally fluent.
Great, thank you.
Great. And Eboni, why don't you tell us about the role that you've been most excited about so far?
Let's see. I think this one's tougher for me. I was very excited to land the role that I got out of school. I think a lot of people go to school, they get a degree, and the percentage of folks that are not working in the degree that they got is quite high. And for me, I think it was just most exciting that everything that I would say, I had done a project in my cost accounting course, my upper level cost accounting course, where, you were running a business, and it was a manufacturing business. And I hadn't had exposure to that prior to my junior year. And working together with classmates and students on this project, we had to name the company, and we had payroll, and we had bill of ladings for shipments and logistics, and so it was a very involved, hands-on project. And so when I got into the workforce, and I'm like, oh my gosh, this is a real bill of lading. Oh my gosh, I have to invoice from this shipment. Like, it just was really exciting to have that tangible work experience that was related to my courses. And so that tied with, again, getting my role at Microsoft, given the strong company culture that Microsoft had, was exciting to come over and contribute to the mission of our company, empowering every person in every organization on the planet to achieve more. So those two roles were probably most exciting for me.
That's a great answer. And I think it's, especially if there's any academics online, any professors, they always like to hear that, yes, like what you're teaching, relates to different roles on the job. And it is exciting when you get to see the overlap.
Yeah.
So that's great. And Eric, last but not least, how about you?
Yeah, I really believe that, in every role you find like that spark in what you're doing that makes that the most exciting, for you. But I'll go to my first role with J&J, because before I joined the company, I was obviously at Procter& and Gamble. I'd spent my time in consumer products. The role that I was in before I left was as the group finance manager for the pure water filters business. And I came to J&J and our Vision Care franchise in Jacksonville, Florida, when they were literally 5 weeks away from standing up that new pharmaceutical franchise. And they brought me down to basically be the entire finance organization. So everything that I was looking for when I left P&G in terms of getting more involved with other aspects of business finance besides just business unit work, like treasury, tax, the accounting processes, all of that, I got, coming into J&J with a brand new industry and a brand new company. I was the person writing all the Sarbanes-Oxley decision control matrices. I was doing the physical inventory counts. I was the entire finance department, and it was extremely difficult. It was probably the most fun I ever had in my career because I got the chance to really start something up from the ground zero. Obviously, with a lot of help from my other colleagues in J&J that helped me craft that, but it was the first time that I was able to really work on something that didn't have a predetermined script to do. And that was really invigorating.
Yeah, I think that's a really great point. And Himanshu kind of brought that up with his time in Mexico, kind of starting things from scratch and really seeing that you truly helped build something. So that's very exciting. Okay, Ebony, let's start with you. What is your favorite thing about your current position? And if there's any special projects you want to highlight or, now's the time.
Yeah. I think the thing I enjoy the most, so M&A was a career transition for me. This is something new. I've been in supply chain for the majority of my career. I loved being trusted with something new. I loved the opportunity to grow and learn something new and different. What I love about my job today and my role is it's complex and it's ambiguous in a fascinating way. I tell folks all the time, I'm like, M&A is super fascinating. And people in the company reach out to me frequently just to learn more about the space and what we do. You have to be agile, you have to be flexible, things change, decisions are made, you have to make decisions with very little information to go on. Like there's a lot of growth opportunity in this role because you just don't always have the answer. And so you have to put on your critical thinking caps in a space that isn't traditional accounting, right? Like the goal is to understand and land accounting operations, but you have to learn so much about what that entails. For example, from a systems perspective, we have legal entities or company codes, and are those legal entities set up systematically to, let's say, receive employees for payroll and things like, you think about things from a different perspective that you probably wouldn't otherwise have thought about. You just think mergers and acquisitions, oh, that's great, move processes over, but there's a systems and a people component to it that is you just have to learn. And so I think the complexity and the ambiguity, while it can be challenging, that's what makes it fascinating. And that's what I enjoy most about it. I'm constantly learning every single day. I've been in this role for over 2 years and still every day I learn something new. And I love that part.
That's great. That's a theme I'm noticing with you all is some of your favorite jobs or projects has been the most challenging, really. So Eric, how about you? What's one of your favorite things about your current position?
I love my current job. It's a major change. Again, most of my career has been in the business unit area, so really being part of the engine that runs our company has been really invigorating. I've always been in kind of jobs that call themselves global roles, but they have people that are basically sitting in the same office area in the US for the most part. This is a truly global role where 90% of my organization is outside of the US, more than half of them are in Asia. And I get the chance to really truly engage in different cultures and really work on how to create globally, a global architecture for our accounting operations with teams that are in vastly different cultures and climates. And get the chance to travel a ton and really experience that firsthand. So I was in Bangalore, India last week, heading to Manila, Philippines in about a month. I was in Bogota, Colombia about a month ago. So I get the chance to really travel the world and engage with all the great men and women who are running our operations. And, I don't get a chance, with the team that's my size, I don't do a lot of analysis anymore. It's really about, building up and developing my people, but that's been such an extraordinary opportunity for me. So it's a major change, but I really, really love it.
That's really cool. And I'm sure that the students online are, especially the ones that enjoy traveling. And hey, if you can see the world through your job, why not, right? How about you, Himanshu? What's your favorite part of your current position? Oh, you're on mute.
My apologies. Uh, so as I mentioned earlier, when I was hired at Starbucks, they gave me a mission: build your team. So, I have a team of 18, and I have hired 16 of them in the last 2 years. And a lot of them are very new partners. We call them partners at Starbucks. And they have never worked in manufacturing. So the thing that I enjoy the most is just mentoring these new partners in their roles, helping them develop, helping them, realize their full potential. A lot of them, they don't know what a PPV is. They have never done a month-end close. So teaching them those basic fundamentals, helping them learn their job, that's what I like the most. In terms of, any project I would like to highlight, I think the one that comes to mind is we were trying to do this massive project investment in a new plant. It was a $500 million project, and it was basically go, do it. And then, the volumes, the demand was changing, and we were, looking from the sidelines whether it still made sense. So 9 months into the project, I went to the CFO and I said, it makes no sense to do this project. Let's cancel it. It was a very difficult thing to do because we had teams of people working on this already, but in the end, it was the right decision to make. I was not a very popular person in those days, but I'm glad we did that work. So the advice I will give to anyone who's starting in a new company or starting their career fresh, pick up a project, something that's very challenging, something that spans across different functions, different regions, interact with a lot of people and drive it to a completion. In the process of doing that, you will learn a lot about your job. You will build these connections, and your life after that would be much easier. And that's what I found out as well. I went through that very difficult time, but on the other side of it, I'm feeling a lot more confident. I know a lot more people, and I know a lot more about the business than I did before that.
That's great. And it sounds like as you move up, in your different roles over the years, you have more of a chance to really focus on people development, right? Hiring folks, training them, helping with that. And that's very fulfilling. So that's great. So let's go to Eric. During the recruitment process, when you first started out your career in accounting and finance, what did you look for in a company? Why did you end up choosing it? And what was so special about the culture?
Well, when I was in college and was being recruited, I kind of cheated a little bit since I did a couple of internships with P&G, so I already knew the culture. It was my hometown company. It was, really exciting, even though, we're talking laundry products, so it doesn't seem really exciting to work on, but you really do get engaged with, the manufacturing processes. You're really engaged as a core part of the business. You really consider the right hand of the business leaders. And that kind of thing, especially with me being interested, not just in the specifics of finance and accounting, sitting there working on spreadsheets, but really being engaged with the entirety of the business. That really was what attracted me. When I left P&G to come to J&J, the thing that attracted me, I think, there was a lot more about frankly, you know, we have our credo for Johnson & Johnson, which starts with our first responsibility being to the patients. And then it goes to our employees, and it goes to the communities, and then it goes to the shareholders. And when you talk to a lot of people, especially in the finance field, they'll say that the responsibility of the company is to maximize shareholder return, which is true. But it's very freeing to work for a company that says, you know what? It's all about the patients, and it's all about improving healthcare. And if we take care of the patients, we take care of our employees, and we take care of the communities that we serve, then we should be okay from a financial standpoint. And that ability to not be so focused on monthly results or quarterly results, we can think more long-term, we can make decisions that's the right thing to do without having to be concerned about, well, how does this impact the P&L this year? Is very freeing. And actually, for a finance person, that was really attractive to me, was to be able to make decisions that were the right thing to do ethically and morally, and not necessarily have to consider the financials, you know, in every corner. So that was really attractive to me coming to J&J.
Well, that's really great to hear. How about you, Ebony?
For me, culture is huge and important. I have worked for companies where the culture was not the greatest. The morale was poor and down. It's hard to do your best work in an environment like that. Environments where employees were scared because every day they walked in, they didn't know if they were going to lose their job that day, because that's how the company handled layoffs. Folks that were just unkind to one another. And I'm not saying every company is going to be rainbows and bunnies, but I adhere to a set of values that I operate in life, and it's challenging when you're in an environment that doesn't align with those values, and the way that people are treated is very important to me. So in my efforts to look for a company, culture is top of list for me. And I actually appreciate the fact that I worked at a few companies where, you know, culture was not the greatest. It helped me to understand and appreciate when I do actually work in a good culture. So again, I'm you know, touting for Microsoft's culture, in that there's a, you know, a level of respect and kindness, and a set of values that we operate in, and they guide us. Our leadership principles of accountability, respect, and integrity, we're operating in those every day. Our management philosophy of model, coach, care. Those are things that are important to me, that I aspire to. And so that's what makes the place that I work in today very special, because you know, you got to find a company whose values align to your own.
Very true, very important. Himanshu, what would you like to add to that?
Yeah, very similar thoughts. You know, I've worked in companies with bad culture, and it's no fun, trust me. So when this opportunity came from Starbucks, you know, this is a great company with great brand, with great mission and values. You know, their mission statement is to inspire and nurture human spirit, one person, one cup, and one neighborhood at a time. That is in their mission and values. That's one line they have, and everyone lives to those values. You know, emphasis on human connection is at the core of the business. Mutual respect, sense of belongingness, you know, courage, and at the same time, getting joy from what you do. My last couple of jobs, there was no joy. It was every day was painful, because the business models were broken. You know, so all those things are, you know, it resonated with me when they asked me to join Starbucks, and for that reason, you know, I think I made the right choice.
Great, thank you. Very insightful. This question is just for Eric, because, you know, you recently reached your 20-year anniversary at Johnson & Johnson, which is very commendable. That's great. And, you know, you've had many different positions over the years. What advice do you have for those who want to invest their time with the company and grow with them, you know, eventually move into that senior leadership role?
Well, I think the most important thing, one of the most important things, is to focus on your development. And I'm being very specific when I say that companies have different ways of career pathing, and people will tell you, well, you should take these types of roles, or you should be in the business unit, like the conversations I have with my peers at P&G, stay at the business units, don't go to other areas because it's going to slow down your career. Don't worry about that. Focus on what you need, what you want for your development. Pick those roles, regardless of what people will say around you. Pick the roles that's going to grow and develop you the most, and stick with that. And once you're in that role, and I won't say you start getting bored, but once you start feeling, okay, I got this, I kind of understand what I'm doing, then it's time to look for the next role. Always make sure that you're stretching yourself, that you're challenging yourself, that you're finding opportunities to learn something new and different and invigorating. And if you do that, and again, take all of the, the kind of things that tend to happen in terms of what your career path should be or different opinions, and just focus on you and your development, then that's going to allow you to create such a robust career path that you'll find your way in those senior positions and doing things that really excite you before you know it. So just focus on that, take all the noise away, and just focus on your development and always challenging yourself with something new, and it'll take care of itself.
I think that's really good advice. Thank you so much. And actually, Mary, maybe you can put the LinkedIn profiles of our wonderful panelists in the Q&A box, because I especially encourage you guys to check out one of Eric's posts that he put up recently. I think it was called 20 for 20, 20 lessons learned for 20 years at J&J, and I found it very inspiring myself. So good stuff. So moving on to Himanshu, this question is just for you. You've obviously worked for various different industries, starting in the automotive industry as an engineer, and then transitioned to more finance roles. What was it like then to shift your focus in more recent years to a company like Starbucks? You talked about a little bit already, but it is such a drastic change, really, and to go into supply chain, global supply chain.
Yeah, that's a great question. So, obviously there are differences, automotive versus coffee, that part is there. But Starbucks is a very unique company. Very few companies are like that, vertically integrated. They have their own farms where they get the green beans from, and then they convert them over into, roasted coffee in their manufacturing plants, and they have distribution network, and then they also have the stores where the end customers come in and they use their product. There are not many companies that are built like that. So it's obviously a big learning opportunity for me. The companies I've worked in the past, manufacturing was at the forefront of everything we did. Here in Starbucks, manufacturing is a much smaller part. The stores are the biggest part. So basically, that's where the revenue comes from, and that's controlled by Starbucks on their own. So learning to know my place in this whole network. And my previous jobs, we always had plants with full P&L. You started out with top line, and then you had a EBIT level, profitability statements every month. You had your own balance sheets. Not quite like that at Starbucks. Everything is centralized basically in supply chain. Your job is to control the cost. What you have standard costs, and you are looking at variances. So what I'm trying to do is a two-way street. I'm learning how Starbucks works, but I'm also trying to see if they would change their ways in how they look at cost. Like, instead of, just looking at variances, how about, are we getting better with time? What was the cost of coffee last year? What is it now? What can we do to improve that? Looking at trends in the business, productivity, scrap. These are some of the basic things we always used to do in my previous roles, but at Starbucks, not quite so much. Very much your cost is, it is what it is. You have some opportunity to improve, so do it, but very much driven by volume. So focus on maximizing your sales. And if you do that, your absorption improves and your P&L and it gets better. So that's a different mindset, and hoping, I can bring a change in how people think and embrace the lean continuous improvement way that I was taught.
That's great. And it's great that you have that different background that you can now bring to Starbucks and give them a different perspective. So this is the final question I'm going to give to Ebony for the sake of time. Now, Ebony, you pursued the CMA mid-career while raising 4 children, working full-time job, and fitting in the time to prepare and study for the exam. So what advice would you give to students who pursue certification while having to meet other obligations and responsibilities?
Yeah, you make it sound like a lot when you say
It is a lot.
I would say just real quick for the sake of time, create a study plan. Make sure you have a plan in place. Get into a rhythm and system of study. Get creative with using downtime. I had to be extremely creative in the pockets of time that I did have to study. It wasn't like I had wonderful 2-hour, 4-hour blocks of time to just sit down and pull out all my books and my calculator and go at it. I did utilize some early Saturday mornings for that so that it wouldn't interfere with family time. But I was creative. I did the study materials that I used had an app. So I took that app with me on the go. I was constantly quizzing myself and during commercial breaks of my favorite shows. So I didn't deprive myself, but I just got creative. I would use downtime to study. I had lectures playing while I was cooking dinner. Always constantly had something in my ear that was just, going over the information and whatnot. And so I'd say also commit to it. Once you commit to it, have someone hold you accountable to it. My husband was fantastic in reminding me that I needed to study, even though I wanted to not. And then finally, just extend yourself grace and give yourself patience. It's a process. It is an exam. It's a grueling exam. It's not going to come easy. I was pretty arrogant. I passed part 1 right away, but part 2 took me 3 times. So give yourself some grace and some patience with that because you're going to need it. It's a long haul, but it's well worth it.
That's great advice. Thank you so much. Mary, I know we need to wrap things up, but did you see any questions pop up that weren't answered yet?
We pretty much have answered them in every capacity. So getting to hear all the different backgrounds of our panelists has been really enriching for the students.
Yes, thank you so much. We really appreciate the time you've given tonight. And thank you to the students and professors who've joined. And we do have future student series webinars like this that we will surely let you know about. And hope to see some of you at the Student Leadership Conference as well in November. It's going to be at the Hyatt Regency in Anaheim, California. Not a bad place to be. So thank you, everybody.
Asking your accounting professors and accounting departments if they have funds available, because this is a wonderful conference for students with great speakers. So if you have the opportunity and the means to get there, I would say it's a fantastic opportunity for you.
Yeah, and different companies come to recruit or at least meet students and let them know about their open positions and culture. I know Johnson & Johnson will be there, which is great. So something to consider for sure.
Yeah. And like I said, we did record this webinar, and we do have other ones on our YouTube page as well. And at any time, if you have questions, you can feel free to email myself or Mitra. But we want to thank you for attending tonight's webinar, and we hope you found it informative.